All right, everyone, welcome back to the Mission 300 podcast. Here is what we're going after today. Instead of giving you the answers to a number of different debates going on in the world today, such as young Earth versus old Earth, creation versus evolution, who's on the right side of this prosperity gospel preacher versus the other side, and the authority of the Bible, and rumors that people remove books at a council or something, instead of trying to get to the answers of that, we want to talk about the ramifications of different belief systems and what they lead to, and really get to the motive behind them. And after we do a little discussion on that, we're going to get to this idea of how do you find your basis for what you believe? How do you find the core thing from which you view everything else that you encounter in the world? So let's get into it.
We're in a culture where there's so much information everywhere. There's this hunger to know what is true. It's almost like we grab a hold of information that makes us feel better or makes us validated. And I just was pondering a conversation I had with my son last night of just this pursuit of being an engineering major, discussing, kind of the science behind life and the world and our creation. And does creation actually match what science actually says? And he's speaking specifically just from being an engineering platform and mathematics and different fundamentals that he's learning. And it just brought me to this question of, do we really base what we believe in scripture? So me being a Bible believer, do I base what I believe in that on how science can validate it? Or does my belief validate whether science is true? So it's kind of this interesting flip. We'll kind of break that down a little bit more as we go. But I think we're in just this interesting place that someone can bring information, challenge our initial premise of life, kind of like the Adam and Eve story. Did God really say that? And I think that is the fundamental thing that we're dealing with today. Did God really put that book in there? Did he really mean what he was saying there? Did he really say it like that? Or is it really something different? That constant, I can't trust what God says. If that gets removed, how do you base any of your beliefs? And one could say, well, I looked at science. It's an old earth. And some will say, yeah, but look at science. It's a young earth. Now we're in two different arguments, and let's remove which one's right or wrong. I mean, I have my thought on that, but let's just say you're in limbo. You have to choose which one's right or wrong. Is it a young earth? Is it old earth? Did we evolve? Were we created? Did God just use evolution as a creation tool? What is it? What is the mess that we came out of? And I think the real question is neither of those. That depends on, if I believe the Bible and I have an experience with God and I have a relationship with him and he's changed me and I met with him and I have this relationship that I know is tangibly true through Jesus Christ. I just have that experience. You won't take that away. Is this information trying to strip me from that, or is it trying to add to it? And I think that becomes a bigger point, because if I'm an engineer and I don't believe in God, I believe in engineering, I'm going to try to defute and get rid of the Bible because it's hindering where I'm going. If I'm a believer, I may try to overemphasize something that may not be fully true because I'm trying to prove the Bible is the truth. So I could be in a problem there. But what if I'm not trying to prove any of that? I'm just accepting this relationship I have, and then I live from that point. So I'm just wondering from you guys, what is the biggest struggle that you have when it comes to challenges to areas that you've accepted as core in your belief? How do you reconcile them?
One thing for me that really helped was learning to be, and this is such a cliche, but learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when you face these things, when you're wrestling with these ideas and there's a conflict, there's this cognitive dissonance that happens, and we hate that. Our brains are wired to want to resolve that. So say I've grown up believing X, and now someone is pushing evidence saying that maybe X is false and Y is true. There's this problem that I have to mentally resolve. And so you either end up letting go of an old belief system and accepting something new, or you reject the new thing and you hold to your core belief. But there's that uncomfortable aspect. And one thing that's really interesting to me about the topics that a lot of people find themselves in today is you're dealing with someone in front of you, whether it's at university or the workplace or online or whatever it is. You're dealing with a person who's promoting this other thing. And there's this uncomfortable aspect of if I hold to my position and my belief, that means I'm at odds with this person. And there's like a permanent frustration or dissonance between me and them. And it doesn't sit well with us because we want things to fit and be perfect. And our brains don't like that. But if you can practice being okay with that uncomfortability, knowing, hey, if you meet enough people in the world, you're going to realize some people are idiots. And so you can either become an idiot or just get used to the fact that you're going to have to be around idiots. And sometimes they're going to stay idiots. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but we're online now. It's fine. You're going to have to get used to the fact that some people are just going to stay that way. And you can either let yourself be moved and then find that you become the kind of man that just goes along with the flow. And we saw how that worked out in 2020 and 21. Or you can learn to stand firm in things, but you need to know what that basis is. And for me, my basis was I believe I was created by God. I don't believe I just splooged into existence out of nothing. I believe that God revealed his will and his word to us, and I'm going to follow it. And that's really as simple as it starts.
I think for myself, it always goes down to like the question of like, what's the point behind this? What's the true reason here? Like if we're talking young Earth, old Earth, okay, forget the whole premise. Does one matter over the other? Is it going to make the Bible true or not true? Like what's the premise behind it? And then let's tackle that issue because that's the core of the problem, right? It makes me think back to I had a Bible class in college, and it was the story of when Jesus cast the demon into the pigs, and it mentions a town. Well, every one of those towns mentioned is different. One's 3 miles away, one's a mile away, and one's 30 miles away. And so it's like, maybe the Bible's inconsistent. Maybe the Bible's not true. Maybe there's all this stuff, and like the professor's going through all this stuff, and it's like, okay, like yeah, I'm understanding, like I'm digging, but I don't like that's not what I get. I think part of it pushes you to actually know, like there's an excellence in actually pushing into to figure out truth, but at the same time, it's like, what's the point? Where are we going with this? Like, is this to prove a point, or is this to like just to learn, to grow? Because I think there's value in that too. Like I remember, like as I was reading like those passages, it made me get into the Greek. It made me get into all this stuff. It made me get into history and learn all these different things. And it's good. But if at the end point is to say, oh, the Bible isn't true because all three of these things are incoherent and it's not one true message, well, it's like, okay, that's clearly not the heart of the gospel. I could say I live in this city in Minneapolis. Well, you know how many cities, how many names come up with Minneapolis that aren't actually Minneapolis? The city where I live, about 25 minutes outside of Minneapolis, you go to write me a letter, it says Minneapolis. So what? Like, there's so many things that could be argued about this, but it's like, what is the actual heart of this? Why are we going down this direction?
I think that poses a great question. I know when you get into the simplicity of James saying, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only, deceiving yourself. And Peter and Paul warn about those people just want tickling ears and they just want more information and more information and more information, and they don't do anything with it. And I think I can live my life knowing God is a father, being fathered by him, my relationship with Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, walking in this promise that he's given that I've already experienced. And there's going to be things I just don't know. I just don't know. If you look at it this way, like take a field, if you're an engineer, if you're a doctor, if you're a marketer, if you're in sales, if you're provide a service, if you're a pastor, all these different expertises you could be at. Does it really, really matter to the airplane pilot if he understands the aerodynamic structure of a bolt and the tensity and how much weight per tension it can handle on that one rivet of the airplane's wing? He may not need to know that. What he needs to know is at certain speeds, his wings could handle so much pressure. He needs to know the limits of the plane. But does he need to know the algorithm and how they got there and how they mined that nut to make you know what I'm saying? Like, does he need to know all the engineering facts? No. That's why I don't really want an engineer flying my plane who made the plane. But I also don't want the pilot to make the plane. I want the pilot to be good at piloting, and I want the engineer to be good at engineering. So there's things that tie to the engineer. And it could be that we take people's callings and we use our human reasonings to measure ourselves to. So if going back to identity, if I'm a pilot and I try to measure my skill to the engineer is going to blow me out of the water with information I don't know. But if I make the engineer sit in that pilot seat, turn off autopilot and put the plane into a nosedive and tell the engineer fix it, the engineer ain't going to know what to do. Going to freak out. And there's going to be information that engineer didn't know that is going to cause this panic. And I think we're in that kind of place a lot of times, even with our relationship with Christianity. I'm not talking about different beliefs within Christianity. I'm not talking about all the different segments where Paul said, I can't believe you guys. You say I'm of Apollos. I say I'm of this person. I'm of that person. And Paul goes, I'm so glad I didn't baptize any of you except for a few of you. So you can't say I'm of Paul. Like, why are we here? Isn't it Jesus Christ and him crucified? So some of these arguments that we make and this division that is formed really is more part of the Cain and Abel story, which Paul warns about, than it is truly about whether it's new truth or not truth. We should be able to have a conversation. All right, so we got radioactive. If you're an engineer, is it old Earth or is it young Earth? Okay, what does the radioactive dating tie to your job? Well, it doesn't. It's just a study I was doing. Does it affect the laws of what you're doing? Well, yeah, it does. Here's the problem if I believe this. Okay, now we can have this conversation to work through it. Instead, we're taking a normal believer, introducing something that causes them to be ripped apart, and it didn't matter. And I think that divisiveness is evil. There's an evilness to it. Like, I'm not really worried about the evolutionary person who doesn't believe in God attacking Christianity. It's irrelevant to me. It's when it comes inside that this becomes so detrimental. And it's kind of true. Christianity is one of the only beliefs that we destroy our own.
I think one thing we like to do here is peel back the layers and try to get to the right question. I think that's what needs to happen for a lot of people, specifically on this topic. Like we said before, you can go through any number of topics today, but the young earth, old earth thing, are you asking, how did God create the earth? Well, let me search the scriptures and let me see what I can see from the book of nature around us that we can figure out how he created the earth. Or are you asking, well, did God really create the earth? Let me ask a bunch of scientists, and whatever the majority of them tell me is what I'll believe. You're asking the wrong question then. You don't have this core basis to start from in the first place. So you're going to be swept away with whatever's current. And spoiler alert, if you've paid attention for more than 5 minutes, you know that science changes its mind every 50, 10, 100 years on pretty much every topic. So enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I mean, to close out this argument, it really wasn't the idea of evolution and things emerging, that was like about 400 or 500 at least documented BC. So of things emerging. But the old earth generally we really didn't hear about this scientific old evolutionary process laid out in a system of an old earth, counter scripture, counter what most beliefs had always said. Wasn't until about 1809 is when they actually laid out that philosophy. And Darwin in 1794 was the one who kind of was saying, okay, things are evolving. And then the old earth, and you're talking about a group of people in the Enlightenment that was anti-God. Like, it wasn't people that had this relationship with God, had a relationship in their belief system with Jesus, that it was people that had religion around them and weren't believers, and they just found counter ways to believe. And so it's almost like they started out with this theory, there is no God. So I have to prove that there is no God. And so they run a theory, and there's a danger in that. It's kind of like a police officer. If you believe person X is the one who did it, you're going to do everything to try to find evidence to prove X did it. If you're just letting the evidence fall where it is and it keeps coming up, but you're trying to find the truth of what's going on, it may not be X, it may be Y, but you're not going to prejudge it. And so it's important when we're running to try to discover something, are you trying to prove something? Are you trying to validate something? Or are you just looking at it factually and analyzing it from that point?
I think go a little bit back, Brian, to what you're saying about like the pilot needing to know the bolts and everything. I want to tie this kind of in as I'm working in my career in sales. Sometimes I get hung up on the whole engineering process, right? I get hung up on, oh, I can't really sell this because I don't know how it works. Like I don't really understand it. I need to be able to know how to communicate it. And my boss has always come back to me. Your job isn't to know how it works. Your job is to find out what the problems are that we can solve. And I think of like the same thing of like with God being a father who's actually communicating to you. Like, is this thing like something that you absolutely need to know or need to dive into for a particular reason? Like, is young earth, old earth, like, is this a part of your job? Like, is this part of your function? Like, does that matter to you? Right. And like, if that's important, I think God will walk you through that and you will learn and you'll grow. But at the same time, there's stuff where it's just like, that's over here. Like, that's not your job. That's not your function. Like, if we were to just stop right now and all of a sudden become a science podcast and be like, okay, now we got to convince everyone it's this. That's not why we're here. Like, we're not listening to the Father's voice then, if that's what we're trying to do. Like, what we should be doing here is we're trying to help guys find their identity, build up their strength, give them the courage to use it, and have an influence in their community. Now, if we start talking about, oh, science this, science that, we're out of the role, we're out of our function, we're out of our what God is speaking to us, right? And I think it's interesting. It's the self, it's the old man, let's say, that wants to get into all the nuance of everything. Like when I'm going to sell, it's because I'm afraid that they're going to reject me. So I need to know how every little detail works so I can explain it. So it's not me you're rejecting the thing. When in reality, that's not my job. My job is to help them find a solution. And I get rejected, that's a part of my job. Well, move on. You know, that's a whole nother thing we can talk about is to move on, buck up, forget it, move on to the next one. That's a whole nother thing. But knowing your job and knowing your function, like if you put an engineer, and we've done this, put an engineer into a sales meeting and all of a sudden it's all technical, la, 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 la. And all of a sudden the customer's like, oh, I'm good. I don't, it's too much for me. Whereas if it was just simply communicated that I could do, because I don't know, like, I don't know the ins and outs. I can get you those answers if you need them, but it's not my role. It's not my function. I think that's what it comes down to is like the simplicity of like, it's not your role. Like, it's not your function. It's doesn't matter.
I think you just peeled back another question because that's something we need to ask ourselves in the first place. Are you wrestling with this because you just want to understand your Father and his creation better, or you want to understand something better? Or are you wrestling with this because you're so insecure about yourself that you need to know every answer so that you won't feel like the idiot who doesn't know something? You won't feel like the person who doesn't know this new fact that just came out. Is it because of insecurity, or are you secure in something and you just want to know and enjoy and learn and grow? Because that's great. But if it's from insecurity, I mean, you're really starting from the wrong foot.
That's so good. As you're talking, I was just thinking about there's things that fire me up. Don't get me wrong. I know you listeners think I have it all held together. There's certain things that just really, it gets under my skin. And it's not necessarily because it's wrong what's being said. It hits me. So it could be it's most likely an insecurity, like it tears away something that I've held on to. Most of my concern today, like even with this thought process, kind of what brought up this topic for today, isn't so much whether these things are right or wrong. You know, it's kind of like, is it a flat earth? Is it a round earth? You know, at the end of the
Well, let's
day,
do that
as
one.
long as believing in Jesus Christ, as long as the Father is true to you, as long as you have a relationship with him and you've accepted what Jesus has done, you know, you want to go flat earth? Go ahead. I just know right now it's sunny out here, and where Jayson is, it's not. I know there's probably a big mountain there that's causing the shade on the flat earth thing. I mean, we could go back and forth, and those that are devout to the other side will be mocking me making those statements. My point is, when we start walking in the truth, we get rid of our old identity. And I think you said that good, Jayson, is once you get rid of you're trying to prove, or maybe it was you, Tommy, you're trying to prove you're something. It's almost like we have to prove we're something by how smart we are. So we become over smart. And by the way, I've seen some people just lay out fact after fact after fact, and none of it's true. They've just so heard it so long, they can repeat it and just know every buzzword. Just think about the master marketing strategy was invented by Satan. He came in and just said, he said the truth. Did God really say? I don't know if he really said that. Well, I didn't hear him say it. Adam told me that's what he said. Uh, Huh. And then their eyes roll, man, maybe this is good for us. It had never even been on their radar. Some of the stuff that we're ensnared in today was never even on our radar. Now we're ensnared into meshes of conversation that will produce nothing at the end. Absolutely nothing. And so I think we're in that place where I need to know my Father through Jesus and what is he saying? And I hold to that, and then you'll never move me, because it's interesting. Satan never came to Adam because Adam knew God's voice. Eve was learning it, but Adam knew it. You couldn't deceive Adam in saying, did God say? Because he would say, yes, he said. So when you know him, some of this stuff doesn't have the weight and the tearing apart.
I think that's so good. I think of when I was growing up in middle school, high school, I think of those exact same things of like sharing all these truths, but not having anything to back it up. Like to call it like the Christianese. And I think we even struggled with this in the podcast, like me and Caleb, of just like, we can spit something out, but then there's nothing to back it up because we don't really know. And I think that is something that's really powerful, is like, did God really say? Like, if you find yourself talking and sharing truth, and then someone just says, did he really say that? And you don't have anything there. I think that's like a red flag to go back to the word, right? And actually get to know who your Father is. Like, there are so many truths in here that are way more important than young earth, old earth. Like, do you actually believe that God is your Father? Do you actually believe that you can do the things that Jesus did? Like, do you believe that? Like, is there evidence in that in your lives? And like, there's just so much in here that it's like, man, if you would have asked me like middle school, high school, and you did all the time, Bryan, you did, where like, we'd be like, oh, this is the answer. And you'd be like, really? And all of a sudden we're like, oh, because of this, because of this, because of this. And we don't really know. It's like, that's the heart of it, is like, you're embarrassed, like yourself, you're insecure in the fact that you actually didn't study, you don't know the word, right? And I think the mark of a true man is being willing to say, I actually don't know, but let's find out. Like, I don't know. And it doesn't bother me because I'm secure in who I am. I'm secure, I'm secure in who I am, but it's because I know who God says I am. That's why I'm secure.
Well, that's kind of one thing I'm curious to hear from you guys about. So one person could listen to all this and take away from it, well, there are certain things we just can't know what's true, so why bother? And I get that there's a context for that, but at the same time, how do we avoid giving into what I'll call the cowardice of Pontius Pilate when he says, well, what is truth? As he shrugs and he goes along with the crowd doing what he knows is wrong because of all the influences around him. So he just shrugs and says, what is truth? Who can know what's really true? I'm just going to do this. How do we avoid falling into that kind of cowardice?
Yeah, it's a great question. We can't come to the point where we become like, whatever is, it is. I move on with my thing. That kind of is it can be reserved as like, it almost can appear selfish. But I think part of this whole picture is, I mean, you can just lay out the cases, and my concern is this next generation that's coming up. Are we, you have the political divide of, from a Christian perspective, Israel support or not Israel? Like, are we of that? Are we not? Old earth, young earth, evolution, you have that. What about traditional family? What are traditions? What are made up things by man? And are we stuck in them? And what about all these denominations? And this one has too much money. This one doesn't have any money. How are they doing it? The process of doing it. I mean, people have made fortunes off bashing and causing division. I mean, division is a huge moneymaker. It's so profitable to be a divider. I mean, if you really wanted to create a good industry and a good podcast, just be a divider. Because you expose something and everyone has this little, see, I told you, like, we want that gotcha moment. And finally someone says well, I've been thinking that for a long time. My favorite one was someone would go inside of a church, says, well, I really have a gift of discernment. I can just tell what's going on wrong inside of a church. I'm like, you don't have no gift of discernment. It's because you're a fallen nature. You need to get born again. Like, you're living from your old, I don't have a father, orphan mentality living life. This is how orphans live. This is how people that have been abandoned live. We find fault with everything. And so we create faults because we're trying to find some kind of value system within ourselves that we can hold to, that we can say there's something not wrong with me. Now, in a sense, there's not something wrong with you that God wasn't embarrassed to come and save you. But because of sin, we become broken and disconnected. Our old nature will do anything to add some kind of value. And if you rise up higher, if you go just a little bit further, I'm going to destroy you. That Cain and Abel comes from that old nature where I want to murder the spirit of someone else. So if you believe something, that I'm going to show how you're wrong, versus, hey, we're trying to figure out a problem here. This theory ain't working. We got to relook at it. And you can actually invite God into the story, not to prove the other guy's wrong, but to get somewhere. That's why if you become a doer of the word, you don't become you're not deceived. So I will tell you right now, I know you, Jayson. I know you, Tommy. If someone came and said, you want to know what Jayson did? Because I know you, even if you did do that, I would know the heart of why you did that, or even our negative nuances. I'm like, yeah, I could see Jayson doing that. Now, just for the listener, no, there's not too many negative things I can see Jayson doing. But I'm just saying, if you did, you know what I'm getting at? Like, because I know you. I know if someone said, do you know what Jayson said? Really? I wouldn't do that because I'm like, nah, I have to hear the whole story about that. Right? My first assumption is to protect the relationship. I need to hear the whole story. When we're quick to hear, like, see, I knew that person was like that, you have not had love towards that person to begin with. When we are quick to discount, we are quick to say, well, see, the Bible isn't real here. You have lived in a feeling outside of the love of God. Because if you've experienced that, your first thing wasn't be like, oh, I knew there's a discredit to this. You would have a different way. Second, you're going to have to prove that that's true because, I know them. Like, this isn't the way it is. Something's off in all this. We need to get to the bottom of it. You come as a little bit more from a different angle. Now, if your ideology is being challenged, if you rock hard on this, like, end times event, I'm a pre-trib, I'm a post-trib, I'm a rapture, and you're diehard to that, and someone challenges it and it makes you all furious and angry. I mean, I get passionate about my little nuances, but my salvation isn't in that. So I want to hear what the other person has to say. So we have to figure out, am my ideology attached to this, or is it my relationship is attached to it? And would I rather protect the ideology even if I lose the relationship? Or does the relationship matter more to me? Referring to God as the center point.
That's so interesting because I keep thinking of that in a specific context. Like, you take a pre-tribulation, post-tribulation, amillennial, whatever it is, and you have this fight and this argument about it. And it's like, you really only get defensive when you feel insecure and threatened about it. Because if I have an opinion on it and you have a different opinion on it, because we're brothers, it's like, okay, he reads this way, I read it this way, and it's not a core thing. That's all right. But if I'm so insecure about him, no, I've got to convince him, because if he believes otherwise, then maybe I'm wrong and I just cannot handle being possibly wrong about this thing. It's just so wild how it keeps coming back to insecurity, it feels like.
Well, and I do think there is a little place of how it's approached. Like, if I just came to Jayson and said, let's say you like raising rabbits, and I come to you and say, rabbits are full of diseases, and I just kind of like hit you at it, you're going to be like, it's not going to be like, well, here's how rabbits are raised. And like, it's going to fire you up because it's not about the rabbits. Like, it's like someone's coming and punching you in the face over something they have, and they don't know all the facts behind it. So there is a place that we actually put people on guard and push them into defensive position because we don't like what they're doing or we don't like what they believe.
That's
So
fair.
I
Yeah.
think we got to be careful that if someone just gets defensive, it's like, well, you wouldn't get defensive. Well, if you come into my home and just start accusing me of things, I probably am going to get a little defensive. First of all, what are
That's a
you invading
really
my
good
world and
point, actually. And I cannot
so
tell you how many conversations I've had in the last month with people that just like that, where one's like, this person's getting so defensive. I just watched you verbally attack them for 10 minutes. Why do you think they're getting defensive? And the greater irony is that I actually do have 2 rabbits down here in the basement with me, not breeding and raising them. They're just pets. So I'll just throw that out there, Brian.
just note to self, this is how God speaks because I had no idea you had rabbits. But you seem like a rabbit-liking guy. You have a rabbit family. I could
I
see
don't know how
that.
to take that. What is that supposed to mean? I'm defensive and offended.
Well, we'll talk about that later. So this is really important,
Well,
though, is because this topic is important because how we approach our heart motives, it's very different. Take any one of those dividing topics, whether are you charismatic, non-charismatic, fundamental, like which Bible translation do you read? Problem is there's some truths that are affecting you. But if I were to approach it from a point of I care about you, I believe you have a relationship with the Father, can we talk about something? Because I see it hindering a thought process. There's a hindering that's taking place. Let's walk through it. That's a different thing where and then you were to get defensive. No, I'm going to believe this, like now you have a defensive posturing. It's like, think about any of the woke thing going on in our culture. You just say the word and it's this explosive dynamic. That's being defensive. That's where your ideology is trapped. That's where Solzhenitsyn talks about, it became such embedded that their whole identity became the ideology. Now you're touching something different. But it's important as believers that our faith is not in the ideologies of what we believe. Our faith is in the one who wrote the words. Our faith is in the creator who put this out. So we're not in the ideologies. And unfortunately, even in Christianity, we make our belief system where our faith stands in, not in the power and relationship of God himself. So there is that. So I just made that a real convoluted mess of, it's not always when someone gets defensive that they're truly getting defensive. When you're being attacked, you're being attacked. But when a conversation comes up and it makes you frustrated, it might be important to say, why am I frustrated with that? What's going on here? That maybe that's the better response. Why am I frustrated with this?
yeah, I find myself, whenever I talk politics with people, I find myself getting frustrated and angry. And maybe it's because I'm insecure in myself that my side might be wrong or that everything that my side does isn't good. And when I get that irk, it's really because I'm insecure in myself and in those truths. Whereas maybe if I just opened up my Bible and spoke the truth and lived the truth, I wouldn't be so insecure about those things. But
Or
that's
maybe it's that you're just frustrated because you know some simple common sense things and you're talking to idiots about it who
that could also
don't
be
understand anything. It could be
also.
that too.
But I think, Brian, you had mentioned something on the podcast last week, and I thought it was interesting in Psalms 23. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. And in the Bible, it talks about love God, love people, right? Love your enemies, all this stuff. And it's like, holy cow. That's how Jesus actually walked in the presence of God when people wanted to kill him, when people lied, when people manipulated, when people sold him out. That's how he was able to walk in that, walking through that. I think that's just like a clear example of like, he was so secure in who his father said he was that all the attacks, they weren't attacks. Because if he let them actually fester, right? If he let them get at it, they were attacking the false identities, right? But he knew what his real identity was. So all these little attacks, they didn't mean anything because he actually knew who he was and he was secure in that foundation. Like that's how you walk in the presence of the enemies. That's how you have conversations with people you completely full out disagree with, but you can still love them because you can love the heart of who they are. You can love who God has called them to be. And they might not be living in that, but you can actually love them through that. And that's how you can sit in these conversations where you're so incredibly frustrated, but it's not them. it's the spirit behind that. It's the false identities that they're living in that you're frustrated with. It's not the real them.
So I have a question for you guys. How do we tell the difference between a topic or a situation that's just, you know what, teach their own? I think the Bible says McDonald's is better than Burger King. Tommy thinks the Bible says Taco Bell, whatever it is. How do we tell the difference between that and a situation where it's, no, this is important and the truth needs to come out and the truth needs to be said. And we have to wrestle with things to get to the truth, to teach people, and number one, to understand ourselves, but then to also teach people and make sure that the correct, truthful things are being seen for what they are. How do we tell the difference? Because there's a lot of times where the lines are blurred.
To add an example, walking through a Bible study with a group of guys Wednesday night, we're walking through this and the study uses a certain translation. It kind of took all of the guys to kind of be like, ooh, didn't really like that they used that translation. And we all kind of just like, we're like, oh yeah, that's not very good. Da, 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 da. Well, we missed the whole heart of the message because of one thing, right? But I think that's exactly what you're getting at, Jayson, is like, when is it appropriate to be like, that translation isn't really a translation, like something's going on there. I mean, I struggle with that myself. Like, when do you actually stand up? Because maybe you guys view me different, but I'm so even keel and just cool, calm, and collected. And it's like, when do I actually make a stand and fight for something? And when do I just doesn't really matter? I struggle with that.
That right there really is a summary. That's really at the heart of the whole piece is when do I stand with that? And I was pondering just different experiences of when discovering God wants to be my father and through Jesus and that relationship and what that like and learning to hear his voice and learning to hear and be guided by him. And those that are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. There's actual actions that start coming out in your life that you're in this journey, and there's so many new discoveries to be made, and there's so many new aspects. And by the way, I just don't think there's any point that once you've become very secure, it seems like something new will come along that you really didn't know you're that you're insecure in. So it's not like this arrival point, but there does come a point where you have to step back and go, okay, how does that new information change what I believe right now? How does it change my relationship with you? Does it enhance my relationship with you? Does it take away from my relationship with you? Does it cause me to distrust you? Is it causing distrust? If it's causing distrust, God, I need you to walk that through, because if I distrust you, I won't believe anything else. And if I can't believe him and his word, you have no salvation. None of it matters. I think that has to be the underlying point. If you don't believe what God said through Jesus and why he actually came, it's one thing to fight whether he came. If you don't understand what he provided for you when he came and died and rose again, if you don't understand, if you can't believe the essence of that, of what happens in you as a result of that, none of it matters. It doesn't matter if historically you could prove Jesus came. If you can't accept that I'm no longer righteous in me, I'm righteous because of him. If you can't accept that I'm now a son versus a broken down, worthless piece of garbage that God just somehow is going to tolerate, if I'm just still a wretch saved versus what he's made me, and I'm growing into that. If that essence isn't there, none of it matters. There's no eternal consequence. How do you believe in an eternity with him if we don't even believe what the past was? Like if we start stripping away elements of our relationship with him, that these other new ideas that come and the arguments are so superficial, it doesn't change when if you're in the middle of the most horrible situation, you're desperate and crying out for God. Do you really care about radio dating and carbon dating? Does that even matter to you? Does it matter if at the essence that God shows up and meets you and touches your life and changes something and brings you into from a lost place into a promise, and that takes place, you'll learn other things, but guess what your perspective will always be from a place of position with him as a son or a daughter, looking at those things. If you're still if the enemy's ripping those things apart, you need to step and say, man, something makes me feel just awful about this. But God, do teach me. Is it just I have this ideology that I'm not wanting to grow? Or I mean, he'll tell you. He'll walk you through it if you're honest with him about it, and then you stand firm. But your truth will cause people to hate you. So if you're saying, well, people are disagreeing with me, maybe I need to reevaluate. No, that's not a measurement of truth. It's your security in who he is, but you still love them. Can you speak the truth? Let them be angry at you, and then when they persecute you, say, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're even doing. Like you're confronting, but you're not in bitterness. You're not, I won. And back to that was a great example of the engineer. The engineer is going to prove their engineering capability. They're going to prove they did the right things to meet this. But at the end of the day, if the person buying it who's trying to profit off of it, if it doesn't make a profit for them, they don't care what it does. If it doesn't have value to them, when I say profit, if it doesn't have value to them, they don't care. They don't care if it glows and does 3 rings, a dance, and can robotically roll down the hill. If I can't have value, it's an irrelevant point, even though the engineer is correct.
That's why we love over engineering things, right? How many times at work if we just stuck to the simple thing instead of keep engineering it, make this not better, it doesn't really add any value. Doesn't matter.
I love the analogy. It's Vince Lombardi. Sometimes just life has much more practical examples than our complexities that we love to get lost in. And I do think it's a lack of identity why we get so lost in these things. But Vince Lombardi, after they would go win their trophy for the Super Bowl, the next season he'd come back and he'd get on the football field and he'd bring out a football and he said, gentlemen, this is a football. This is what you do with the football. Why in the world would he go? They just won because he would never let them forget. Here's what we do. We go back to the basics versus the complexities of here's our play. And now we do this play. And we're constantly building to the complexities that we so easily can lose the basic element of why we do what we do to begin with. And when that's there, we can build off everything else. Don't you think it's God wanting to take you into mysteries about radiocarbon dating and all this? I think he's more fascinated taking you on that journey versus you trying to find God in it and then proving whether he's true or not true or valid or not valid or this scripture is like, we have this backwards. Why not take a journey with him? And at the worst case, you develop a relationship with him. And guess what? You may just be wrong about something. Okay.
That's one crazy thing that I've thought over the years is there's so much of this. You almost write off the God answers as too easy and boring and meaningless. And I'm like, do you understand that the one who created the universe, we can actually know him and have a part in his kingdom and his life? And you think that's not as exciting as your little math experiment? We are so misunderstanding the nature of things. It's just incredible. But any final thoughts, guys, as we wrap it up?
Well, that's what woke me up to a relationship with God. Was like I was so wrapped up in all the different theological things, and I could say everything, and then it was just the simple message: do you know that you're God's son? Do you know that God actually wants to father you? Do you know that God wants to walk with you in the daily things? And all of a sudden, life just became way more practical, way more in the moment, and it wasn't any more of like all this up in the air. That at the end of the day, like, I don't know, some of those things you might go to heaven even if you're wrong. What a shocker. Like, oh my goodness. So I think at the end of the day, like, it's the simple things. Like, it's a simple message. It's a simple gospel. It's not complex, but God also is going to walk with you in that. And he's going to take you into things that are so immeasurably complex that will become simple to you because you're walking with God in it. You're not walking on your own, trying to explain the things of God.
My closing thought is my kids know me. They don't know everything I know, and they don't know me in the way you guys know me. They know me as dad. They know my character. They know what I'll do. They know my love for them. They know my nuances. You guys know a different aspect of me. Pretty close because you've been with me almost as long as my kids. But in that journey, that's the most important. And then guess what? You'll discover things about me. You'll just discover areas of creation and wanting to do that together. And the Father wants you to know more than you even want to know. But if you start finding yourself in the basics of becoming bitter towards someone who appears to know something different, counter the Cain and Abel story, be aware that's not coming from the Father. Be aware if information is coming that's discrediting who God is. Well, did God really say that? Be aware that doesn't come from the Father, not that approach. And be aware if it's coming to you from a place of, I'm right and they're wrong about their beliefs and we've got to get this right and fix it. If your attitude is win the ideology, it's not coming from the Father. Now, when speaking truth because you love that person in front of you, and even though they may not like you as a result of it, but you care so much, you're sharing truths that will bring you to the Father, take it. If you're hitting truths that people just aren't willing to accept, but you've seen it, you've done it, you've been working at it, you've handled it, just let it roll and let them grow. Have patience and grace for them to grow into those things. You're still dealing with the whole thing, but you're coming from that place of security. That's where God wants you to be. And that's what makes the difference. Because ultimately, we all want to know what's true. And what's true is Him. And it can only be found in Him. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward.
That's good. Want to wrap it up with a couple of verses from Ecclesiastes. At the beginning, in the first chapter, we see this. I said to myself, I've magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And then at the very end of the book, he says this, of making many books, there's no end, and much study wearies the body. Now everything has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it's good or evil. I think multiple things can be true at the same time. This is the focus. And yes, we are called to different areas, and we should study and know what we're talking about in our area. But at the same time, keeping in mind that this is the point. So you guys keep that in mind, keep that motive right, and you'll be all right. We appreciate you being here. Until next time, keep the faith and stay in the fight.